Почнемо.
So, hello everyone. Such a joy to be here with you. Thank you for inviting me. And I really hope we'll provide some important aspects and have some fun doing it, learning about integration and ontological aspects. So as Ina was saying, we've already done this with therapists that are being trained and certified in psychedelic therapy. And it was really nice. People enjoyed it a lot, so we thought it's good to bring it to a larger audience. And this will contain real cases, both from me and from Inna. So we hope you'll play along. Now, we're going to start with a bit of the current context and why this is important. We'll segue into a bit of casework. We'll do the first case together. I'm just going to give you a short teaser. It's called "There is no God, the Bible is not true, I'm not special." The second case we will discuss, we don't know how much time we'll get, right? So we'll see how many of the 4 cases we get to do. It's better, we convene that it's better to go deeper in our understanding of each case rather than run and rush through all of them. But just mentioning them. The second is I killed people in another life. The third is the shaman sold my soul to the god of death. And the fourth is I am possessed by demons. Don't look at me. Right, and at the end, after we take a bit of a practical approach, we'll go back to the theory and see how what we have proposed meld into perspectives on truth and how it is connected to ontology. So to start us off, if you don't know this paper, maybe we can send an email afterwards, or we can put it in the chat. And this paper by Gerd Grunder and Henrik Jungabelle discuss how psychedelics can be integrated in mental health care. And there's a table that shows different stages and what therapists need to take into consideration and medical doctors need to take into consideration. And if you are in any way familiar with the topic, you will probably know most of these. What is added that's really interesting for our discussion today is that in the aftercare and integration section, we have check epistemic narratives. And maybe the part in the dosing session that says that as therapists and as medical practitioners, we should encourage a non-dogmatic, rational approach to psychedelic experiences. Maybe this is familiar and it's easy to understand why it would not be good to involve any of our own beliefs in the psychedelic session. This is a bit interesting, right? Check epistemic narratives. What is epistemology? It is the branch of philosophy that looks at knowledge and how knowledge can be reliably obtained. Right, and there's this example of epistemic luck that I like a lot. It says that even a broken watch shows the correct hour twice a day. Right, and if you happen to look at the watch in that moment that it shows the correct, that is just epistemic luck. It will not tell you the correct time in other moments, right? But it just happens. So to check to see how our patients, our clients are dealing with the narratives, with the stories they have encountered during their psychedelic experience. And let's say that they fail the check, right? We check them and they fail. My patient has some really suspect epistemic beliefs. Maybe my patient now believes that he is in charge of the universe, or he is God, or they are God, or right? So it's really good that this paper tells us to do this, but it doesn't really tell us how to do this or what to do if our patients fail the epistemic check, right? Should we just take out our big epistemic hammer and whack some sense into them? I mean, if you have any clinical experience, you probably know this is not the wisest approach. You probably, even if you are a trusted authority on truth, and they come seeking answers from you, telling them that they are wrong or that this is not how things are, is counterproductive. Does not usually lead to robust changes. Right? So what can we do? And even, right, even if they do listen, and even if they take this point that it's not like that, it does not help them in the long term in different situations. It did not give them a way to handle further epistemically suspect situations. So our proposal for today is to shift the perspective from epistemology to another branch of philosophy, which is, wait, we went a bit further. Okay. Just a second. Which is ontology. And ontology is the branch of philosophy that deals with concepts such as nature, being, time. And the way it deals with these domains is that it uses trees of inheritance, and it classifies objects and events and the properties that belong to each category. So, for example, if we have a physical agent, right, and you know that the agent is in a room, and you didn't see that the room opens, you'd expect that the agent did not exit the room, right? And if the agent goes through the walls, that contradicts our definition and category and traits of the physical agent's category, right? If I say I am talking to ChatGPT, and you say, but that is not possible because I'm also talking to ChatGPT and you are not talking to it right now. I'm not talking to you right now, right? What this tells us is that we are dealing with a non-physical agent, right? That can be at more places at once. So what is interesting in the realm of ontology is that when these separation of traits and inheritance is being violated, we can look at it as ontological confusion, which is a bias in knowledge about psychological, biological, and physical phenomena that would be caused by categorical trespassing. That we take some properties that are specific, for example, one of the categories, and we attribute it to another category. We treat physical objects as non-physical, or the other way around. What we can do to look at this is to look at an easy example, an easy exercise, which is to classify the following statements as a metaphor or as a literal truth. This one should be easy. Mozart is a composer, right? If this is metaphoric for you, we are already dealing with a problematic ontology, right? This is probably easy for all of us to agree upon. Also, if we say that his concerts were bombs, that's a metaphor. While it might have been explosive in terms of applause and public admiration, no actual objects were destroyed by his concerts, right? There was no physical explosion. So it's easy to classify some statements as metaphor or literal truth, but it gets a bit harder as we go into different categories. Furniture wants a home is already easier, right? It's not that difficult, but we can already imagine that there are some ontologies that would have trouble classifying this, right? In our ontology, probably it's easy to see that this is a metaphor. If we are to go even further and to look at statements such as the earth wants water, here we can already see the diverse nature of ontologies. In our Western ontology, the earth wants water is a metaphor. In other ontologies, the earth is an agent that can want things, right? Plants want sunlight. So the shift from epistemology, which deals with what is true, to ontology is important because it allows for diverse worldviews. And while there are certain epistemologies of different cultures, it does tend to be more rigidly regarded than ontology. Now, how does this apply to psychedelic work? Well, when your client comes in and says, the shaman sold my soul to the god of death, we can reply, and you will understand by the end why we do this, with WTF. And you will know what this means, right? And this is what we'll try to learn as a therapy tool for integration, how to use this sentence to make sense of an entire ontology, right? Even if our client, our patient, is from a different ontology than ours, even if they're had their experience in the Amazon and are working with different concepts and different categories than we are. So this is the first case, and it is the case of a early 20s, a male student away from home, early 20s, and after a psychedelic experience with their peers from their new university, they call in for an integration session and they say, I had a terrible experience. It showed me that there is no God, the Bible is not true, and I am not special. Right? So my question would be, what would you be interested in this situation? What would be important for you to know? What would you ask?
Це вже питання до обговорення. У нас така більш інтерактивна сьогодні зустріч, тому ми будемо багато вас питати вашого зворотнього зв'язку. Так,
Nadia?
Надя, будь ласка.
Yes, hello. I think I would ask how did he come to this idea?
Right, that's a great first question for an integration session, right? To see what exactly happened during this psychedelic experience so that they got here, right? So what the person says is that they had a blast in the beginning, they were having a lot of fun, and then suddenly it dawned on them that they're all stories, that everything they have heard are stories, and it became crystal clear in that moment that there is no God, the Bible is just a story, and there is no magic. Anything else that you'd like to know when dealing with this person?
If I can continue, yes. Yes, my next question would be like, and what is it for you? Like when you realized it, so what? What does it change? How it changed your life, your conceptualization of the universe, everything, like what does it mean for you?
Wonderful, right? And what Nadia is inviting us to do is to look at the consequences of this of this change in belief, right? Because having a change in belief is not important in itself. It is important to the degree to which it changes something in the person's life. So the question is, what is different now? Right? That's a really good question to follow up on, to see what did this change produce in their lives, or what is no longer accessible, what was there before in their lives and now is not accessible, or what potentialities have been closed. So the person didn't really want to get into this as we were going through integration. What the person wanted to do is to get an answer if psychedelics tell you the truth or not. They wanted to know if what you see in your experience is true or false, and if there is a God, and they wanted me to figure this out for them. Lana, please.
Мені здається, Лана хотіла задати питання, вона в чаті стала як руку підняти. Будь ласка.
Так, дивіться, я би перш за все задала питання, що для людини означає цей досвід і як вона до нього ставиться. І чи був у людини запит на таку відповідь і на такий досвід?
Yeah, they did not have this question. And this was part of what they wanted the integration session for, is because they said, I did not have this problem before. I just wanted to have fun with my friends. And I come out the other side of the experience having this terrible question that I really need answers. And you really need to tell me, you're this expert in psychedelics, and you need to tell me, is it true? Does God exist? Please.
Can we try to give back him, this client, his responsibility? Like, oh, I'm sorry, I can't know, does God exist? Because, you know, it's a big, difficult question. We never know. And it's impossible to prove that there is no God and there is a God. So probably, what do you think about it? Like something like this.
Wonderful, right? To share this responsibility and to realize our limitation, the limitation of our role. I am an integration therapist. I am not a chaplain. I am not a priest. I am not a pastor. I'm not a rabbi. Andrew, please.
Hi, everyone. Hi, Eugen. I'm Andrew. I probably would like to ask him what is his previous experience with any religion. Like, I mean, God is quite a specific word. I mean, there are some confessions like Buddhism, yeah, and there is no God at all. And, you know, so to ask him what was his previous experience with any religion.
Wonderful, right? And together, right, what Andrew said and what Nadia said is looking at what happened before, what is the person's experience, right? And how does that change? So if we have these two aspects, we are in the best position to understand what is happening, right? To see what the history is. And this is very interesting because this person, no one knew from his friend group, and I didn't know until I got to this point in questioning, was brought up Catholic, very dogmatic, strict Catholicism, no deviation, went to a theological seminar, a high school that's only for very devout Catholics. Their whole family was very Catholic, right? So this question weighted a lot. What I could piece out of our conversation is that this person is losing their family. This person is losing their friends. This person might be exiled and outcasted, right? So even if they didn't really want to get into that, into the consequences, I could reconstruct them based on their previous history, based on what this psychedelic experience landed in the life of this person. Andre, please.
Дякую. Так. Чути, да? Да, добре, дякую. Я би на базі того, що сказав Андрій попередньо, зробив дещо провокаційний хід і запропонував йому побути адвокатом дьявола і знайти докази того, що він існує. Можливо, це якось похитало чи якось змінило його погляд на цю ситуацію і на його погляди. Дякую.
Yeah, that's wonderful, right? To share this responsibility, to reflect the responsibility back to them. And that's such a wise way of doing it, to invite them to play devil's advocate literally in this situation. Now, a question I had, and we can go to Lana, right, and Ina after I point this out, is what happened with your friend? Did you talk to anybody about this, right? And what I found out is that their friends laughed at him, that his friends laughed at him when he said, "Oh, you know what this experience showed me, that there is no God." The friends laughed and said, "You know what this is called? This is called being a mature person. This is called growing up." Right? So there's already a lot of hesitation. There's already a lot of punishment around it, and the person is very guarded in telling me what is the implication of the situation, right? It gives us a bit more context to understand why this is so important and so heavy. Lana.
Ну, це більше мова, я зараз скажу не про питання, а про такий напрямок роботи з таким пацієнтом чи клієнтом. Бо питання Богу, воно досить часто випливає взагалі в психоделічному досвіді. Це така специфічна штука, наскільки я з цим стикалась. І зазвичай це особисто мій досвід і досвід моїх інтеграційних сесій з людьми, коли людина каже, що я побачив, відчув, що Бога немає, вона має на увазі, що вона просто відчула цю концепцію Бога по-своєму, тобто не так, як написано в Писанні, в Біблії чи в в релігії цієї людини. А вона відчула щось своє, воно не стикується з догмою, яку вона вивчила там, наприклад, в родині, і виникає оцей конфлікт, що Бог є в неї, але він просто інший став.
This was one of the approaches, right? To understand spirituality and even religion, right, on a spectrum with different beliefs and different potential ontologies. Like in my clinical experience, there are people who take the Bible literally, and there are people who are more spiritual or more diverse in their approach, right? And it was really interesting because in this specific case, deviation was a problem. Thinking maybe it's not the God of the Bible was already highly problematic. And we can piece this together as we look into what Andrew invited us to look at, which is the family, which is the community. Because if in my community, God is the God of the Bible, then I will have a lot of issues if I go back believing something else. Right? So as a general approach to psychedelic therapy, that's great to look at how this shift in ontology has impacted the person and what does God mean for them now. And it feels like, that's a brilliant approach to integration in general. And in this case, there was a lot of focus on, oh, no. What I want you is to tell me if it's like this or not. So, Ina?
Я хотіла озвучити питання з чату, тому що Влад запитав, а що означало бути особливим до цього досвіду? Да? Цікавий момент.
Yeah, that's a really good question, right? Because it felt in this integration session, it felt like the whole God and Bible were very thorny, but what does special mean, right? What does magical mean? So this person was told since he was little that he is a special person, that he is a unique person, that God loves him, right? So it felt like all the things that made the world work and good and righteous and just have collapsed in this experience. That there is no one at the other end of the tunnel that's guiding you, that's protecting you, that's making sure that things are okay. That in the grand scheme of things, you are no longer a soul that has a mission, but you're just random. Right? So this was the sense of being special. Maddie?
Вибачте, що без камери. А в мене таке з'явилось питання, що в багатьох парадигмах питання Бога пов'язано взагалі з батьками, бо в дитинстві наші батьки, вони боги, да? І якщо якщо батько добрий, то Бог добрий. А якщо часто батько буває злим, то Бог, він такий караючий. І оце, знаєте, це підсвідоме, коли чомусь людина зрозуміла, що Бога немає. Я б запитала, можливо, про стосунки з батьком.
Right, and this is a very nice pointer towards the diversity of approaches that can be applied in psychedelic integration. And there's the one approach that I found very interesting called integrative therapy, right? And they say we should look at cognitions and we should look at family relationships and we should look, right? There are so many different layers, and the integration hour has 60 minutes. Right, so it's a really good question, and it could be, right, God is a symbol for something. What does it stand for? And of course, this really good question would lead us back into the family dynamics, which was really important for this person. Right, and being punished and being accepted by a superior force that might be God or might be the family structure or the community.
And what if we like shift his attention, like, so he lose some Bible previous beliefs, but we ask him what you obtain, like, okay, you lose it, but let's see what you get. Because when you lose your old paradigm, and now you can like create new one. So this is like what the psychedelics give you. They some kind of clear previous belief, like cultural, parental, and many other. So I will like more try to focus him like, so you leave all your beliefs, what you want to be.
Wonderful, right? And this is, again, a great approach to integration in general, seeing what new ways have been opened. In this particular case, the person didn't want to have any of it. The person, whenever we touched upon the possibility that this might be true, they became very defensive, and they told me, they returned to this question, is this true? Right? Which informed me that there's something very important that's being lost. That's so important, what is being lost is so important that very few things could compare in magnitude. That what they could gain would be hard to compare to what was being lost. All right, and being confronted time and time again with this question, is it true? And knowing that my role as an integration therapist has nothing to do with this question, and I am not trained and cannot answer this, right? The next best step was to see what I can do, right? Is to see why they are not seeking this from a person that is certified and skillful in answering this question. Right? So that was my approach in this case. And I asked him, who could you ask this? Right? If you wouldn't ask me, and if I'm telling you that I don't know, I'm not trained, I have my belief, but that doesn't mean that is true. who would you ask? And there it was, right? The confessor, the priest. The person knew that he could ask the priest, but was afraid because he had just taken drugs and he had this experience, and maybe the priest would scold him. Maybe the priest would tell the community. Maybe it would somehow leak that they're having these doubts. Maybe the priest would punish him. And here, it's already back in my field, right? I know how to deal with fear. This is part of my job. How can we approach things that are feared and at the same time are very important? Right, so 2 sessions later, the person agrees, after having worked through this, to go and talk to the priest. And the priest is very benevolent. And at a follow-up, maybe I think it was 1 year after that we got in contact, the questions were, the doubts were dispelled. The priest said, okay, you are being tested. Don't do it again. It's not a problem that you did it, but maybe don't do it again, right? And the person was secure in their family, in their belief, in their community. Right? So I think this is an emblematic case of how difficult it can be if you try to bring in your own ontology, right? If I were to talk to this person from my own beliefs, how different the situation would look like. And look, it's an important moment to look inside and to think, if this person came to me for integration therapy, what aspects of my own beliefs could have changed the direction of this conversation? What things that I consider true, right? What aspects of the ontology that I use could have changed this, or maybe distance this person from me, as it happened in the case of the friends, right? The friends said, well, this is called maturity. And that was the moment when the person retreated. Okay. So, second case. I killed people in another life. Person comes in, says they saw this in their experience. What do you say? What do you want to know?
I'll try to ask all the detail. What people, what time, what life, like who were you? Because I think it's important to know exactly what you're dealing with. I mean, by cognition, like it will be first things. And what else? Like, what do you feel about this? Like, yeah, I will start with this.
The fun part about this case is that it's both one of my cases and one of Inna's. That we both had 2 different people showing up with the same story in integration, with the same problem. In my case, and maybe Inna can jump in with her perspective, and then we can move on. But in my case, the person just saw that their hands were bloody, and they felt a lot of fear and a lot of remorse, and thought, I killed someone, and this must be a memory from another life. Not a lot of detail. Inna, do feel free to jump in, or Artem, or...
Пані
I'm
Надя,
thinking if we give some word to Nadia and Artem first.
Yeah.
And then I can...
I would be also curious here if how does he, what's the attitude about it. So maybe someone would be glad, like, oh, I'm not a coward in my ex life. Like, we don't know. Maybe he's sad. Maybe he's exhausted. Maybe depends on how he think about it, and then discuss like, what does it mean for you? What do you think about yourself now? And so, yeah, thank you.
Wonderful, right? Again, this question of what does this mean? And an interesting perspective on it. What does it mean about the self? Who are you now that you've done this? And in my case, the person wanted again to know if this is true, if psychedelics can connect you to previous lives, and if this is true. Again, a question, an ontological and epistemological question that I cannot answer, if this is or not true, right? But I can look at what does this make of you? How does this change your life? Who are you if this happened? And who are you if this didn't happen?
В мене тоді ще питання. Я б, мабуть, продовжив це місце досліджувати і питав би, де він вбиває чи шкодить комусь у своєму поточному житті. Щоб тут і зараз наче знайти оцю природу цього досвіду. Можливо.
Beautiful, right? Like in the previous case, we can search for parallels and see what in your life does this remind you of? What issue in your life is this addressing, solving?
And
Я думаю, що я... вибачте.
last question. Like, and he wanted to hear, is it a true or not? And that's all what he wanted. Like, it was a rational man, I mean. Like, but the dilemma is here, like, we can't explain it, like, because, you know, we can think about, okay, let's explain it's like DNA, I don't know, history, like, sometime in your gene, like, was a murderer, and that's why you see, but, like, can we do this as an integrational, like, therapist, like, or not? Or it was, like, my mental model?
Right, this is a very important question because exactly as Alex supposed, right, towards the end, this might be my own ontology coming into play. Right, and it can be that this situation is completely different for this person. So, of course, there is no guideline saying you should do it or you shouldn't do it. And the whole purpose of our conversation here together and our brainstorming and coming with all these ideas is to see what could happen or what, right? What are the directions if we do it?
Ну, я можу вскочити і якраз додати деталі зі свого кейсу, тому що якісь питання якраз дуже гарно підходять до мого кейсу, насправді. До мене прийшов чоловік десь 40 років на психоделічну інтеграцію, і зазвичай я роблю таке занурення, щоб згадати психоделічний досвід, з яким людина хоче працювати. І під час саме такої відомої медитації людина потрапляє у такий спогад візуальний свого психоделічного досвіду і починає дуже хвилюватися і пересказує мені, що він бачить себе, що він потрапив в плем'я американців, корінних американців, що це було там кілька століть тому, і він там закохався в дочку не шамана, а вождя цього племені. І в кінці кінців він вбив цього вождя, тому що він був проти того, щоб він був з його дочкою разом. І коли він вийшов із цих спогадів, він був дуже схвильований і сказав, що він, по-перше, це дуже так яскраво описував, як це він навіть проживає зараз, цей епізод. І він сказав, що це відбулося насправді, що це те, що з ним було в минулому житті, і через те, що він це зробив, що він вбив цього вождя, зараз в цьому житті він повинен вискупити, да, свою провину. І це дуже впливало на його повсякденне життя, тому що він вважав, що ця провина якби постійно з ним знаходиться, і він бачив, що корінь цієї провини саме в тому вбивстві, який він зробив у минулому житті. І в такому варіанті, які ваші ідеї, що вас би зацікавило, які у вас були б питання, можливо, якісь спостереження? Будь ласка, Надя.
Я би спитала в першу чергу, а як саме ви маєте іскупити цю провину, якщо ця людина, ну, вона знає конкретно, якщо вона цю ідею має, да, що буде конкретно досягненням результату іскуплення цієї провини, що буде після того, як ви іскупите цю провину, що буде, якщо ви не будете її скупати, наприклад, ви оберете там, да, не робити цього, які наслідки будуть для цього. І також, можливо, б занурилась в якийсь поточний досвід, а що в цьому житті було такого, можливо, хтось з вами щось таке зробив, ну, що для вас сприймалось як вбивство, і ця людина не понесла покарання, і для вас, ну, тобто, я б це досліджувала, да, можливо, щось з вами таке сталося, хтось зробив, і людина не понесла покарання, або навпаки, може, ви не понесли покарання якесь за щось реальне, що ви зробили. Да? Тобто я б таке досліджувала. Ну, мабуть, поки все. Потім би слухала.
Цікаво, цікаво. Цікаво, дякую. Так, ну дійсно, через питання провини це був такий місточок, насправді, вибудувати зв'язок з реальністю тут і зараз, і зрозуміти, в чому його ця провина турбує в реальних ситуаціях життя. І ми потім з'ясували його, звичайно, ми перейшли в питання його стосунків там з батьками, вони піднялися, тому що він провів ці паралелі, і там були складні стосунки з татом. І це теж питання, да, наскільки мені, як психологу, хочеться зробити свої проєкції, що так, це ж паралелі, про те, що от є батьківська фігура, от його проєкція в психоделічному досвіді на цього вождя, і ось це символічне вбивство, яке він проживає, і цю провину, яку він постійно намагається якось прожити, якось з неї звільнитися. Але питання, да, якщо в мене з'являється ця проєкція, якщо це прям так проситься і здається, що це ж просто очевидно, да, яка була б стратегія, чи повинна я про це говорити з ним, чи повинна я свої якісь здогадки йому проговорювати, чи мені більш коректно було б слідувати за ним, за його фантазією, тому що він дуже багато, навіть не за фантазією, за його баченням, да, тому що він дуже багато разів повторював, що це його реальне життя, і це була цінність для нього. Ця віра в те, що це було його реальне життя в минулому, для нього було цінністю.
And this is, I think, a nice bridge with my case, because it was the same guilt, and it was the same idea of being punished, and it was for my person, it was an explanation why they wouldn't fit in, because if I did this in my previous life, it makes sense why I'm a loner in this life. And to answer or to point something to Alex's perspective, what if we do say one of our beliefs? So what I learned by following Inna's suggestion of holding back and looking at the context is that this person was a medical doctor, and in their department there was this maybe father figure that was very skeptical. And this person that I was working with had started to have different ontologies, that started to believe in reincarnation, they started to do yoga. So there was a bit of this, and they didn't know, is this real? right? So if I were to give something from my side, it might support them or it might hinder them, right? I might give them a different perspective, right? And they're already struggling with this. It's a very personal question of what is real and how can I deal with it.
Марій, будь ласка.
Мені зараз так відгукнувся і на ваш кейс, і я так слухала, і я б запитала, напевно, які цінності були порушені у цього клієнта, да, і який у зв'язку з тим у нього зараз внутрішній конфлікт.
Ну, це дуже гарне питання. На жаль, я прям не можу розкривати деталі, тому що далі ми вже пішли саме в психотерапію більше. Да? У нас були елементи інтеграційних таких епізодів, але все одно розкрилася вже така сімейна історія, і потім цей процес перейшов більше в терапевтичне русло, і саме деталі його історії терапевтично я не можу передати. Але так, це питання про цінності, про порушений кордон і про неможливість через почуття провини відновити свої потреби, заявити про свої потреби. Ну, і там ще, і, як ви бачили, в історії про кохану жінку, не без любові. І це теж важливий елемент, тому що вся історія психоделічного досвіду, вона насправді торкається таких дуже значимих яскравих елементів, в принципі, в житті будь-якої людини. І, звичайно, що почуття до жінки в даному випадку теж були паралельним елементом і в реальному житті, і в психоделічному досвіді. І те, що я намагалася зробити це через те, що він мені явно дав зрозуміти, що для нього цінно було його віра в те, що це було саме його минуле життя. Ми просто паралельно працювали з його минулим життям. Він проживав там свої процеси, які він був прожити. І насправді для мене в цьому аспекті не так важливо, чи це дійсно його паралельне там якесь минуле життя, чи це він символічний якийсь процес проживає. Мені було важливо, що є динаміка, є довіра, у нас немає такої конфронтації, я не намагаюся йому нав'язати своє бачення, і у нас була можливість і терапевтичний блок зробити про саме вже реальне життя тут і зараз, і про його стосунки в реальній сім'ї, і про цей епізод, який він теж розглядав як реальне життя, яке в нього колись було.
And I think in my case, the values were connection. That seemed to always be a hindrance, that this person never felt connected, although he really tried to be connected. So this was an explanation of why it's so hard to be a part of something, why it's so hard to be connected. And on the other hand, it was spirituality. This person was just experimenting, beginning to expand from a materialistic perspective, right? And this was also heavily punished in their workplace and in their social circle, right? So this was the conflict around the values in my case.
Якщо нікого більше немає коментарів, я думаю, можливо, ми можемо перейти до наступного кейсу, щоб у нас був час також розглянути.
Інна, would you like to introduce it? This is your case.
Так, це мій кейс, один із таких десь найскладніших, але й найцікавіших кейсів психоделічної інтеграції. Я навіть його так прям записала, він досить об'ємний, і ми його довго розглядали на минулій лекції з нашими колегами, тому що там дуже багато біографічних деталей і нюансів, але я постараюсь його якось так дуже швидко передати, щоб просто передати суть. Значить, цю інтеграційну зустріч я проводила в Перу і зустріла там чоловіка, який вже довго проживає в Перу, і він кілька років жив разом із шаманами і використовував аяваску для там духовних цілей, для трансформації. Він проходив там це голодання дуже довготривале. І тобто в нього досвід із аяваскою був такий дуже об'ємний, скажімо так. І в якийсь момент в село, де був цей шаман, з яким він проживав на той момент, приїхала жінка, яка завагітніла від шамана. І цей чоловік, мій клієнт, він побачив через деякий час, що ця вагітна жінка, вона знаходиться ну, якби під загрозою, тому що, ну, якщо ви, може, знаєте чи не знаєте, в Перу саме в цих плем'ях шаманських, там є дуже суворі такі правила, і є шамани, які ну, можуть бути дуже такі насильницькі дії робити. І він зрозумів, що шаман хоче саме вбити дитину, коли вона народиться, тому що там з якихось своїх причин. І він забрав цю жінку від шамана, вивіз її, вони народили там дитину, і він жив із нею, якби опікувався її уже на той момент, коли ми зустрілися, 3 роки. І він страждав від депресії через те, що він не міг покинути свою таку роль опікуна цієї жінки, цієї дитини, і пояснював це тим, що в момент, коли він викрав, по суті, цю жінку із цього плем'я, то шаман, який проводив ці аяваска-церемонії, він вкрав його душу і продав там дьяволу. Я не думаю, що в них немає такого поняття. Ну, в принципі, там є якісь чорні ритуали він провів із його душею, і таким чином він ніби її забрав від нього. І через це він відчував депресію, йому здавалось, що він більше ніколи не зможе відчути радість в житті, і в нього з'являлися нав'язливі думки, що в будь-який момент із ним щось може трапитись, може якийсь accident, якийсь нещасний випадок відбутися, і він може померти в будь-який момент, і це буде вплив саме цього шамана, тому що він може там робити цю чорну магію. І ось в такому стані він прийшов на інтеграцію. Саме всю цю історію він мені потрошку видав через кілька сесій. Це не відбулося на першій сесії. У нас був досить довгий процес інтеграційних зустрічей. Загалом у нас було десь 8 зустрічей. І от ми поступово досліджували його стан і що відбулося. Так, дуже-дуже коротко про цю історію. Які у вас є питання, які у вас є, можливо, думки, що можна було б використати як терапевтичну стратегію, або які питання вам би цікаво було задати цій людині? Тим бачу, ти дуже зосереджено думаєш.
Та просто такий кейс, ну от, якось нестандартний, то я просто намагаюся зібрати це все, ну от думаю про це.
Будь ласка, Андрій.
Ну, якщо я правильно зрозумів, працювати потрібно з цим викрадачем, так?
Що ви маєте на увазі?
Клієнт,
З шаманом я не
ну,
можу
клієнт
працювати.
ваш, ну, мало лі, Інна.
Ну, в такому випадку
ну,
навіть моя онтологія не дозволить мені піти до цього шамана і з ним працювати.
Чого ж це можна? Ну. Окей. З викрадачем. Ну, тут я би застосував декілька підходів. Да? Ну, про-перше, вкрав душу, да? Це така дуже, ну, якби заява серйозна. І тоді ми йдемо з ним виясняти, а що таке душа. Це про що? Як він конкретно розуміє, що таке душу, як її можна вкрасти, де за неї можна зачепитися. Ну, таке дещо заземлення його позиції. Друге, можна піти ще як психоедукації фрагмент, що є у народі деякі повір'я на те, що там можна заговорити, да, там ще таке. Але ну, я б казав би від свого імені, да, як з мого досвіду, це можливо, коли людина знаходиться в емоційному стані, тому вона дуже вразлива в цей момент. Ну, такий елемент психоедукації, і розбирали би з ним моменти, в яких він знаходився в емоційних станах, коли він про це думав, коли вони втікали, коли там ще, ну, у процесі. Ну, отак покроково йшли кудись би на пониження градусу його відчуттів. Тобі ж його відчуття, градус, ну, можна було б задати провокаційне питання, а як ти думаєш, ти можеш вкрасти душу шамана? А як би ти це зробив? А давай пофантазуємо, от що, а які є протидії? От ти вкрадеш її, і тут протидія. А чи можеш ти ці протидії використовувати для свого захисту? Ну, десь от в такому плані. Ну, можна фантазувати ще багато, було б з ким. Дякую. Це в мене звук пропав чи тиша? А то я такого наговорив, може шайман і душу мого смартфона теж вже вкрав.
Right. And Andre, what Andre presented is a branching decision path, right, that we can take in our integration sessions. Do we try to find out more about what they mean through soul, and how can it be sold, and how can it be bought back? What can be done from this
Maybe
position?
викупити. Ну, можливо, це може бути стабілізуючим для того клієнта.
Right. And I think this depends a lot on how much time you have with the client, right? If we have a longer integration process, then we can go into the details of their ontology, and that can help. And if we have a shorter integration process, we can focus on what does it mean in their life, right? And what can be done immediately. And there is a very thin line between integration therapy and psychotherapy. And of course, integration therapy is just psychotherapy around the psychedelic experience and its effects, right? And its meaning. And this is also a choice we can make together with the client, right? If they're looking for a solution, or if they're looking for a deep dive into unpacking their own ontology. So, of course, both branches have the potential to be efficient. So this is something really important to ask ourselves, and it showed up in our previous cases as well, right? To ask, one of the first questions is, how can I help you? What would be my role? What would you want from me?
Вибачте, в мене чогось дуже погіршився різко інтернет, і мене просто вибило. Я намагаюся зрозуміти, чи я вже повернулася, чи ви мене чуєте, чи ні. Ага, ніби всі рухаються. Так, вибачте, да, я якраз на самому цікавому моменті зникла. Чи є якісь ще питання? Я так зрозуміла, що Євген підхопив вдало тему. Скажіть, чи є питання ще по цьому кейсу, чи ви вже завершили обговорення?
Ні, ми ще не завершили. Андрій Баєв поділився там своїм підходом, а так всі мовчали, тому що всі підвисли.
Ну, справді, це непростий кейс, і він зайняв саме інтеграційні зустрічі, вони були досить інтенсивні, і це була досить інтенсивна програма, скажімо так. Тим паче, що там не просто, скажімо, були питання на психоделічну інтеграцію, а й цілком людина прийшла, яка ніколи не була раніше на психотерапії, ніколи з цим не працювала, не зустрічалась. Так, чи ви мене чуєте, чи ні? Бо в мене щось дуже
Так, тебе чутно, все добре. Просто нема відео, а чутно тебе добре. Я гадаю, поки в Інни інтернетом, да, пропав, от ми можемо тоді продовжувати. Пане Євген.
Okay, so maybe we can go to the underlying, right, perspective. We have seen a couple of cases, and we can look at what we have done together and what ties these cases together. And most of them are about truth, right? And what is truth? And well, truth is a bit of a thorny devil. It's really hard to know what is true. And Pepper says that there are three perspectives on truth. The first is that truth is correspondence. Truth means a mirror of reality. And what mirrors reality correctly, undistorted, is true, right? But this can be difficult. People think they believe what they see, but you probably know and have noticed that people see what they believe, that their interpretation shapes reality more than reality shapes their interpretation, that the stories that we have been brought up with construct and shape our world, right? So what else can truth be? Well, another perspective is that truth is coherence. Truth is non-contradiction between different fields of studies, right? If mathematics tells us that a function is one thing and behavioral psychology tells us that the function is the same thing, then that must be true because it is coherent in all disciplines. And at the same time, right, there is a lot of interplay between our disciplines. And while coherence is useful for a scientific perspective, we can have a coherent system that is not related to actual change. So the final perspective is the pragmatic perspective of William James. And from the pragmatic perspective, truth is successful working. So if I reliably reach my predefined goals, that is true, right? And this pragmatic perspective helps us decouple from the question of what is true and reorient towards the question of what is useful. And of course, the final judge of the usefulness of different approaches is our client. Our client will be able to say if the things work for them or do not work for them in their ontological perspective. So I'd like to briefly introduce the philosophical perspective of functional contextualism. And maybe the people that are aware of ACT, acceptance and commitment therapy, know the people down below, Stephen Hayes and Kelly Wilson. And maybe you know Charles Darwin from here and B.F. Skinner, operant psychology, and William James, right? So what does functional contextualism say? It says that we can work by looking at the fruits, not at the roots, right? We can examine what are the consequences of certain beliefs, right? What difference do they make in their lives? And we can orient towards this rather than towards is it true or not. And what this allows us, very important in psychedelic work, is to have an a-ontological stance. And now, of course, the philosophers in the room are ready to skin me when I say that I work from an a-ontological perspective if I claim that I do not have a personal ontology. But I do have one. The only difference, right, an a-ontological stance does not mean that you do not have your personal perspective on categories and their traits. It means that your clinical conversation is not guided by them. Right? So what guides your clinical conversation? The functions of the stories that people bring into integration in the context of their lives. The consequences of that specific experience in their previous history, in the life that was given to them, or that they have lived so far. When a person, right, when we ask, how do we integrate an experience, it's a bit like asking, look, this psychedelic experience has brought me a Dali painting. How do I integrate it in my living room? Right? The first question is, what does your living room look like? Without knowing what your living room looks like, I have no idea how I can integrate a Dali into it. Right? So that's where this perspective places its emphasis, that we need to know the context of the client's lives and the changes that have been brought by this psychedelic experience, what has been lost, what potential has been gained. And we started right from WTF, and WTF from this perspective means what's the function, right? So this is the overarching tool that we can use in each of these integration cases to ask ourselves, what's the function of this story, of this experience? What solutions does it provide? What hindrances does it bring up, right? What is being lost? What is being gained in this particular configuration, constellation of a life? And of course, there are many approaches. This is just one that is very compatible with psychedelics because it does not require us to bring our own ontology. And as Inna was saying, it prevents clashes between our ontologies. It prevents me telling my client there are no such thing as past lives. You need to snap back to reality. We don't know. We can work with a variety of experiences, spiritual, religious, different experiences, right, without the need to contradict them, and offering something that is empowering to our clients and that is useful in their life, right? And there is no right approach. Some of my favorite integration therapists don't have a ontological stance, and they tell people what they believe. So that's perfectly valid, right? What we want to offer is tools and perspectives, and you'll see, and based, right, on my a-ontological stance, your actions will have consequences that shape your practice. And it will lead you into different directions with different clients. So just a couple of questions to consider, right, as we are going towards the end. What do you assume about the nature of reality? Is it material, spiritual, one, many? What are the sources of knowledge that you tend to give privilege to? Scientific evidence, lived experience, revelation, intuition. When you do not agree with the client's assumption, how do you treat it? Do you treat it metaphorically? Do you treat it symbolically, literally? How do my assumptions impact the questions I ask, the interpretations I offer, the psychoeducation that I put forward, right? All of these are, to some degree, influenced by our perspectives on reality. Am I an interpreter, a validator, a translator, a challenger of the client's ontology? What is my role in the relationship between the client and their ontology? And of course, maybe you have noticed this as we were going through the cases, that we have emotional reactions when things don't fit the categories that we work with. So that's also an important aspect that needs to be observed as we go into these cases. Some things rattle us more than others. And when that happens, what do we do? Do we normalize, psychologize, spiritualize, medicalize the client's experience? And what does that offer to us? What's the function for us in what we're putting out for the clients? How does that change our environment when dealing with a particularly difficult or emotional case? Right? What takes us out of the therapy space? What's too far or unacceptable? Time loops, spirits, other lives. Maybe we can send you a translation of this slide. So I guess I don't know how we are in time, if we should proceed to questions. I think it's been a lot already. Alex, please.
Hello. The question belongs to the Inna's case about shaman and her client. Is Inna here or again? She's not here.
She doesn't seem to be here, but maybe I can take it. I have heard her present this a couple of times.
Okay. First of all, it was some opinions about the case, what to ask, and I think my questions would be like, what does it mean to you to lose a soul? How do you understand losing the soul if it was stolen? And how would you manage this? How would you return it? Because he was living in Amazonia for a long time. He was in that traditions, and he, I think, believed much in the loss of the soul. And I don't think that it's a good approach to be not sure about his his approach to this. So that was my possible way, and it's interesting to ask how it really finished, if we can hear the answer, if you know, and if it's possible to tell. That's all.
Right. So I think what I remember from Ina's case is that once they work through his anger.
I'm sorry,
thank you.
Eugene. Okay.
Wonderful.
Sorry, Eugene. I think I have somehow my internet is not working well. I don't know why. I think would be the best, because I don't know in which moment I disappear again. Who is interested to hear the finish of the story, you can write me an email and I will send you a description of my approach and how the story finished. So maybe you will have some important insights and hints for your future practice from this case as well, because I don't want to start talking and then disappear again. I'm sorry, so sorry for the technical issues, but I will still want to be connected with you and also satisfied your your need and interest in this case as well.
Now, if we are to take this approach, right, to the first case that we presented about the Bible and God, right? If I were to ask my client, would you still care if this is true or not? If your family would not reject you, if your friend would still accept you, right? If your community will still be there and they wouldn't change. Sometimes it happens, right? Just by changing the function, the pressure of knowing and the importance of truth can be changed. And of course, there are always both ways, right? That you can go in the specific ontology and try to learn about it. And at the same time, I'm not a shaman. I don't know how to recover a soul. Working with anger, on the other hand, that's something I know how to do. Starting difficult conversation with loved ones, something I know how to do.
I have one question about your way of working. Do you have some kind of protocol or that you follow, or it's like and something like you just feel and act, or there is a specific protocol how to integrate it and what the client should do?
So I come from an approach that is not based on protocols, but it's based on processes.
Mm-hmm.
So I think the basic idea is around this idea of what's the function, around this topic of what's the function.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So once I know, I guess the outline of it could be determine what the person wants from therapy, what their goal is from integration. Right? Do they want to understand this? Do they want to change something in their lives? Understand the context, both of the psychedelic experience and the past, right? The Dali that you get and the living room that was already there, right? And then see how you can help the person to move towards what it is important, towards what they value.
Mm-hmm.
And basically what I do is apply acceptance and commitment therapy principles to integration therapy.
Mm-hmm.
So
Thanks a lot.
if you want to book generally on that, there's some recommendations. For example, A Liberated Mind by Stephen Hayes is a really good introductory book to ACT, and it can easily be applied into psychedelic work.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
And what about bad trips? Like you also want to integrate because it's quite interesting topic. Like what does it mean and why this person get this experience? Like, how you treat this?
No, that's a really tough question, knowing why bad trips happen. If we would know, we would probably try to prevent them in some cases. From the mind foundation approach to integration, you would, or at least to psychedelic therapy, right? A bad trip is dependent on a context where you don't want it to happen. In psychedelic assisted psychotherapy, you would say that this is not a bad trip, this is the activation of the problem. You would suppose that it reflects some process that happens in the life of the person and that is being replayed in the therapy session. So you would ask yourself, is this relevant to the person in their lives? And if so, how can we work with it? Usually, right, when you see a bad trip, it's about things that are important and it's about things that are happening in the person's life. Very rare, if ever, have I seen just a bad trip, just something that were, of course, in a bad setting. If the person took something of a high dose at a concert, yeah, not having a good time is sometimes to be expected. But if you take it with a therapist in a super secure environment, if you do the dosing, then it's usually indicative of a larger pattern, problematic pattern. Or at least this is one of the first steps to ask yourself, does that show up? Feeling stuck, right? Does feeling stuck show up in your life? How? When? What does it prevent you from doing? What does it keep you away from?
Yeah, it makes sense, like because you dealing with a problem, and if you set the goal, for example, for a session, or like, who knows, like where it goes, but at least you're trying to set a specific goal. But it makes sense if the bad trips related to the trauma or some situation in life. Thank you.
Right. So the way we consider it is problem activation. The problem got activated. And we check. We don't assume, we don't say, yeah, this needs to be your problem. We check, is this relevant?
Okay, last one question. Maybe it's not related to the integration of the experience, but I'm wondering, like, so you do it in the hospitals or clinics, like, does it make sense to do somewhere symbolically? I mean, in treatment. Symbolically, I mean, for example, at home, he has trauma. So something happened in this home. So you just put his in the environment, like make some induction, like hypnotic induction, and bring in this situation. Like, have you ever done this, or it's a people practice like this?
So what we know for the dosing session is that the brain areas that are related to change in people's behavior and lives are more active when they have the blindfolds on, right? So we would try to encourage people as much as possible to stay inside for their experience. Moreover, being inside the blindfolds and listening to music will help or will prevent people from avoiding, right? If I'm outside and something is unpleasant, maybe I try to move, maybe I try to look at different things. So it's a more direct contact with important inner experience. So I think revisiting the trauma space is important, but I would think it's most useful to be after the psychedelic session, right? You would have the psychedelic session in a very safe place. And then as part of the integration, you would encourage the person or maybe even go together to feared places. So that's at least my perspective, that I think during the session already a lot is happening. So having a very safe space and then using the window of flexibility that has been provided by the dosing session to expose the person to trauma.
Yeah, it can bring a lot of emotions. Thank you.
Really good question. Thank you. Nadia, please.
Hello again. Maybe it's not really concerned to our topic, but it's really close. I have a difficult client. She has psychotic symptoms. She's also using drugs, and she's really young. She's like 17. Soon she will be 18. And I know that she's struggling to quit drugs. So I know that psychedelics make a lot of easier to make it. But I know that you for sure need to find someone, because she's using psychedelics, but you know it's not a therapeutic setting. So I know that psychedelics shows a good impact on it. So how could you recommend me? Where can I try to find someone who can lead her during this process? I know that it wouldn't be simple because she's in Europe, but like maybe from what should I start? Maybe the name of this specific experience or specific role. Who can help with it? And maybe do you have this experience or your colleagues? How does psychedelics work with drugs addiction? Thank you.
Right. I think it's really good that you pointed out that this is not a miracle cure. That if psychedelics would be a miracle cure, the trance festivals would be the #1 psychiatric clinic, right? People would come out of it all healed of their depression and their addiction, but that doesn't unfortunately happen, right? So it's all about the context. And I think this is really important when we're working with people that already have a substance use problem, that we emphasize that what will really do the trick is preparation, sustained behavior change, integration afterwards. If you're looking for places where she can have this experience legally, I think if she's under 18, I don't think there are many places that will accept her being under.
It's okay. She can wait. Like she will be soon 18, so it's not a problem. And I'm her therapist. I can lead her during the process, but I can't lead her in psychedelics because I'm not trained. So I need someone to work in coalition with this, or to maybe help me to guide her where she can find it. Maybe not now, but later.
So there are two directions where psychedelics can be legally used. For the first, I mean 3, but one is quite far. Maybe 4 if we can't count Canada, because the Australia is an option, but Australia is quite far. And in Europe, the options are Switzerland, and in Switzerland, she needs to work with a Swiss doctor, and she needs to be treatment resistant, and the doctor will apply for a special exemption, and she can receive psychedelics with this doctor. Or there is the other perspective in the Netherlands, and in the Netherlands, it is not legal for therapy, it is legal for self-development. Right? So if she were to have this experience in a retreat in the Netherlands, it's not legal to offer it as therapy, but as self-development. If you want some names for people that work in Switzerland and the Netherlands, drop me an email and I will give you the contacts.
Where can I drop you? Like here in a chat?
I'll give you my email now.
Thank you. Thank you. They're really helpful. Thank you a lot.
A joy to be able to contribute.
Друзі, враховуючи те, що у нас Інна з причин технічних відключилася та раніше не змогла до кінця поділитися, ми планували десь біля 1,5 години якраз роботу і зустріч з паном Євгеном. Тому я пропоную нам іти до завершення. Можливо, якщо у вас є ще питання до пана Євгена, чи пан Євген має чим ще поділитися, то ми ці питання задамо, і будемо завершити нашу зустріч.
Right, so please feel free to message me for anything, any question, or if I can help in any way, I would love to be helpful. So just, you have my email, drop me a message. And it was such a pleasure to work with you and to see your diverse perspectives on how to work with these cases. I hope it was interesting and useful, and that you have some new tools to play around with. And thank you for having me on.
Thanks a lot, like, to you bring the new perspective, like, to me, and how to integrate it. I didn't like thought about this kind of hard question, and that really like enrich my mental model. Thanks.
Так що сьогодні